It's the play, and Drew Tate doesn't know that. The game's going to end on this play. He fires downfield. It's caught, and into the end zone. Goes to the end zone. Lobs it to the far corner. Upset eye. Ross throws a block for Sargent. He's going to crawl over that goal line. Hurdles in for a touchdown.
What's up, Play the Fight Song fans and Iowa Hawkeye fans? Welcome into the first preview episode where we dive into Iowa's opponents each week. That's going to be the focus of these, is to teach you a little bit about whoever Iowa's playing that weekend. This week happens to be the Illinois State Redbirds. I appreciate you for jumping in here. Sorry for the miss on the preseason stuff and just a longer look at the season as a whole. Just wasn't able to get to it, but I'm pumped to get here in week one and talk about Illinois State and the Iowa Hawkeyes in the game that is coming up this Saturday at 11 a.m. inside Kinnick Stadium. Long time we've been waiting for this, and probably one of the more interesting off seasons we've seen in a long time in Iowa City. So it's time we finally get to put the football down on the turf and play a little, So I'm very happy to be I'll be at home watching. Won't be in Kinnick, sadly, for that one. But I'm very happy to have that turn on at 11 a.m. quick, sharp, and ready to roll. So what we're going to do here, if you haven't seen one of these before, is what I do is I go into our opponent each week. I do it from a fan perspective. I'm teaching you about Iowa and kind of going through things. If you're watching one of these, probably you're a big enough Iowa fan to understand most of what's going on in Iowa City within the program. I'm not some insider, but I am giving you a perspective from another fan who puts a lot of time and maybe a little more than the personality than they need to into being an Iowa fan. But that's just how I was raised. It's just how I was, and it's become a way passion of mine. I also do play the fight song here as you're watching this on our YouTube channel. Subscribe there. You can get Iowa, Iowa State, Nebraska fan perspectives. You're also going to get a weekly live college football show and maybe another one on Sunday. I'm not going to, tell anything or say anything too much, but pay attention on Sundays as well. That's a live football show we usually do Wednesday nights throughout the season, previewing the games coming up and a little bit of recaps of the week before. So let's get rolling into what this game is in Iowa City. Illinois State walks into Iowa City. If you remember who Illinois State is, just an FCS program in Normal, Illinois. A pretty good program, too, and they've been pretty solid within the Missouri Valley, who you could call the SEC of the FCS. That is a very good conference, and a team that is ranked right now in the top 25 of the FCS is Illinois State, but they're picked fifth to win in the Missouri Valley. That just tells you how deep and how good that conference is, right? When you're running up against North Dakota State, South Dakota State, UNI, Southern Illinois, you can kind of just go through that list. All these schools are very talented and very good at what they do. So head coach being Brock Spack, this guy has been there for 15 seasons, only head coaching job that he's had. He played at Purdue, I believe, a long time ago. He's 101-70 over those years and has really made a winner and a consistent program out of the Redbirds. Now, last year they did not make a bowl game. I believe they went 6-5 and missed, or not a bowl game, sorry, the playoffs. Missed that, but I think they're a little higher on themselves this year going into it and with a chance to get in it and maybe upset a couple of teams and sneak their way into the playoffs. Currently, right now, I believe they're ranked like 22 in that FCS poll. I think that could go up as things go on. Again, this is a team that is not afraid to go play big schools. I think they every year for the next couple, they'll be at one of the big power schools within the country. The breakdown here, I just want to go through who this team is, personnel-wise, what you might see, what to expect out of them. Illinois State wants to run the football. I think if you look at their stats from a season ago, like they really worked hard to run the football. They ran almost 200 yards a game a season ago. They were putting up over 30 points a game. They wanted to run the football. Now, were they able to throw it a little bit? Yes, but maybe not to the extent that they wanted to run the football. And when you have a guy like Mason King, who's a workhorse back, nearly 1,000 yards a season ago, a ton of promise. He's 6'2", 220. I mean, he's a Caleb Johnson-sized kid with probably a quicker first step and a quicker get-off than Caleb Johnson. And he's been that good, and they really like what he has. They have a couple other backs in no filter, and they got one from the portal, one that was there for a couple years prior, closer to about 300 yards on the season last year. But I do think that they want to run the football, and when they got guys like Jake Rubley battling for a quarterback spot with Tommy Rittenhouse. These two guys are still kind of undecided. Everything I've seen, undecided who played quarterback. Rittenhouse kid throws it solidly. He's not going to turn over. He's more of a field general kind of guy, but he can move around really well. And we know a kid from Kansas State is going to be able to move around because they always have mobile quarterbacks. So the Rubley kid and Rittenhouse would be between the two. I have not seen exactly. I'm recording this Tuesday around noonish. I'm not really 100% sure on who will be the guy there. I will say this: if Iowa can keep them in the pocket and just make them beat them in the air, it's not really going to matter much because it's going to be tough to run the football into the front seven that Iowa puts out every week. But it is interesting to know that they have a real guy in the backfield, again, in Mason King, who they want the football in his hands, and the guy that can legitimately take that and make a lot of plays for him and be the guy they need to. The main threat of receiver, that's going to be Daniel. Now, again, this is a tough one to pronounce. Sabkowitz, Daniel Sabkowitz. I think he was last year's top target. That's a tough one to say. 68 catches, over 900 yards and 10 touchdowns in the season ago. Go up and get you a football is basically what this kid did for him a season ago. He wasn't necessarily, the sharpest guy like speed wise, but he's a guy who go get you any football that you need to. And I think they really embraced that last year. And to be honest with you, like I think the offense is good, but I don't think it's the strength of the team. Like we'll talk defense a little bit later, but there are two guys on the offensive line I think you need to pay attention to at tackle. At right tackle, they got a guy, name is avoiding me right now, but he's 6'4", 6'5". I mean, he's a big tackle as well. But then Hunter Zambrano, left tackle, is a legit draft prospect. He's a guy who's going to be an FCS All-American. He's preseason All-Conference, 6'5", 300. And he's showing up on draft boards in some spots. So he's a real talent. And I think that's a good, smart challenge. Like at Iowa, you're going to have to get your defensive ends. And we know what Iowa really needs is a better pass rush from a season ago. That's a real challenge. Like you're going to put your best on best here and let's get after it, put your hand in the dirt and see if we can't gain, a little traction in the sack department. It'd be a ton of fun to do that and see how that works out. The interior is not as big and not as talented. The bookend tackles, like I was saying, are really talented, and I think Iowa will really work to expose, maybe get them out of the way in some blitzing schemes. But I don't want to sit there and say that Iowa's just going to eat these kids alive at tackle, and I definitely will never say that these tackles are just going to handle anything Iowa throws at them. I just don't think that's a real possibility. Defense, I think this is where most of the shining is. I'm not going to get into names as much in personnel. This is a shorter one with it just being Illinois State, and I think a lot of people are just ready to watch some football. The defense only allowed 20 points game last season. Now, they didn't play any FBS schools on that schedule, but they did play again in a really good FCS conference with some really, really good talent around them all over the league. So it's not like this defense isn't anything. They also bring back a ton, and they have really good defensive secondary. The linebacking core is easily the best part of that defense, and it's a unit that wants to create havoc. I mean, they have 3 or 4 guys that had over 4.5 sacks last year. They find ways to create havoc, get into the backfield, and make plays, and that is a massive, massive thing to pay attention to because you're looking at an Iowa offensive line who it didn't matter who it's been over the last couple of years. It's spotty pass protection. I mean, if it's quick and out of McNamara's hands, it was fine. Deacon Hill couldn't move at all. So if the pocket collapses in any way, shape, or form and the ball's out of hands, we might see the same problems. And I think that's something to really pay attention to because Illinois State wants to get after the quarterback, and they're very confident they can do so with the linebacking core and the edge rushers that they have. After looking just kind of at the defense and what they did a season ago, I think the main game plan here is to just let the front seven eat and have the DVs make plays on balls that are thrown errantly over the middle or late in any spot. It's just create some havoc. Don't give up too many points on big plays. That's pretty much what the DBs are there for at this point. Get after the quarterback, let your playmakers make plays, and let the DBs make tackles on the back end if they need to, but the linebackers that are just clean everything up. Another thing with this is if you're looking at the Iowa offensive line, I got the depth chart here to my left here. Mason Richmond, Bo Stevens, Logan Jones, Connor Colby, Jennings, Ducker is how we'll go here. So you got junior, senior, junior, senior across the offensive line. I mean, buck up or shut up time for a lot of these guys, right? Like we've been told over the last couple of off seasons that they've gotten better and better and better. And I believe that. And a lot of them were put in there early, but the development hasn't been there. I don't know if the scheme, I don't want to say the scheme hasn't helped them, right? Because a lot of teams across a lot of Iowa history, found a way to run the football effectively in that scheme. Now guys are getting more athletic across the country. It gets a little tougher when you know exactly what's coming, and it's been 20 some years of seeing the same concepts. So maybe the Tim Lester hire does help this offensive unit out and just put them in better spots to succeed, right? They're not getting A gap and B gap blitz exactly every time we're running off tackle. They're having an ability to chip off and get to the second level. That would be really nice to see. So I'm excited to see that. We saw a lot of different. We saw Nick DeYoung last year. We saw Ellsbury. We saw. I feel like that offensive line got switched around so much from injuries or like struggles. I want a unit right now, and I think they feel the exact same way. If they can find 5 guys to keep healthy and be confident with, there's no reason that they can't keep rolling with that. So let's jump to Iowa, kind of what's coming out over the last couple of days. Now, this is again before Ferentz's press conference here in a couple hours, but no Kirk Ferentz for the week. Does that really change anything for Iowa? I would say no. I would say this is a well-oiled machine. This runs the way he wants it, whether he's there or not. So I'm super excited to see kind of how this all operates without him and how much things change. Because I think the biggest thing is here is that this is the first opportunity for Lester and Ferentz to work together in game and kind of how they want to operate of like the actual stresses of a game before we go play Iowa State. I mean, Iowa State comes to us, but you know what I'm saying? Like, that's a big stressor. I mean, that game's never really a blowout. Every once in a while it is. I don't expect it to be. A lot of people are picking Iowa State in that game. So, like, just the change in how things operate and the non-mesh there is definitely worrisome, but I am very confident in this team and this coaching staff and this whole program to handle a situation just like this. I think number one here, I'm looking right on the depth chart. I think something that might have shocked a lot of people, a lot of articles are out there, whether it's 24/7 to one register, wherever you get your stuff. Kamari Moulton actually listed as the number 1 running back. Now, I have some friends who really liked Kamari Moulton and thought he would be a better 2 than Caleb or Jazz a season ago. Like, obviously, LaShawn was getting most of the carries, but they kind of felt like he was a bigger upside guy. I liked him too, but I really wanted more out of Caleb Johnson. I thought he was just, just a quick turn away from being that real stud that Iowa needs in the backfield. So we'll go Kamari Moulton, LaShawn Williams, Caleb Johnson. Now, we know how important depth charts are. Honestly, to Ferentz, like, these change all the time. They don't really mean all that much, if I'm being completely honest with you, especially at the running back position. But I'm curious if he gets 45% of the carries now between the 3. What if he gets 50% of the carries and the other 2 split 25-25? Like, all possibilities. I just want to know what that now means that he's now the number 1 on the depth chart. Quarterback duo, Cade McNamara versus Brent Solon. Cade's named starter. That's fine. I don't, there's a lot going on around this program where it's like, hey, is Brendan Sullivan better than Caden McNamara? Maybe, but I would also like to see the opportunity given to both here. I don't want to do this whole split quarterback thing the whole year. I would really appreciate this to get to a point where we battle this out and we ride with one until things get to a point where this is unacceptable and we need to make a change. I don't want to do every other drive. I don't want to do, I don't know. I just like rhythm. But if we're going to not run the football well or not throw the football well and not hit open guys against Illinois State, then there shouldn't be a question as to who gets more snaps in the second half or something, right? And I've heard people say, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. I've heard also people say that incorrectly or, intended incorrectly. When people are saying that to you, 2 quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks, they're saying that if you're splitting drives every time, if you're splitting quarters, if you're splitting whatever, and it's just 1-2, 1-2, there's no rhythm. Your offensive line's going to like somebody more. Your receivers are going to like somebody a little bit more. Things are flowing different with different guys at the helm calling plays in the huddle. There's just a flow that gets off. That's what they're saying. They're not saying have one quarterback and then a really good backup. Everybody in the country wants one of those. So I think that's something to pay attention to. Like, if people are saying that, make sure they're saying it with the real meaning behind it and not just saying like, oh, if you have 2, you have none. No, I want 2. I want 3 quarterbacks actually on the depth chart that I really like, but I only want to play 1. That's what we're saying. Also, going into here, we touched on the O-line a little bit. I do think Jennings Ducker is going to be really solid. I think Richmond at tackle will be solid, but it's the interior. Logan Jones has gotten better and better. Colby, Stevens. I just want to know how good that interior can be, right? Now, looking at the defensive line, I'll just scroll over here, make sure I get to my other depth chart for the defense. The defensive line is good. It's how deep is the defensive line. I want to see how many guys get really rotated into this, and I'll probably get some answers here today after this press conference. So I apologize I didn't get this done after that, but we're just a little bit time crunches when I could fit it in. Deontay Craig, I'm a big fan of. Aaron Graves, Wyatt Black, obviously. Ethan Hurkett's a guy a lot of people are reporting on saying he could be the sack leader this year. I would love Aaron Graves to be that guy. It's a little tougher to do it at the interior tackle spot on the defensive line, but I do think he's a guy that's possible to do that. Deontay Craig would be awesome to see that too. Guys that people really want to see is Max Llewellyn, Jeremiah Pittman, Brian Allen. These are all guys you're really excited to see on the defensive line, and I'm excited to watch them as well. Now, one thing of note as well, opposite Jamari Harris at right corner, at left corner, TJ Hall listed as your guy. And I like TJ Hall. I think him and Deshaun Lee are two guys that have a high upside, and I'm pumped that they're getting their reps here. And with Cooper gone, somebody's going to have to step up, and Jamari really was slow getting into things last year, but got better and better. And so the two young corners I'm really excited to watch. So I do appreciate everybody jumping in. Hey, if you're curious on this hat here, no rivals. Didn't drop Iowa too long ago. If you use code PTFS, you can get your own. It says Go Hawks on the side, no rivals logo, Hawkeyes across the front. They sent me a couple. Thought I'd give them a shout out here. We do appreciate everybody joining here and watching on YouTube. Again, check us out on live shows throughout the week, all our fan perspectives and things like that. We do appreciate you jumping in. And honestly, this could be one of the better years of Iowa football. Let's hope it's not as stressful as a season ago. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Go Hawks.